So we've rigged a lot of things, we've animated a lot of things, and we've learned how to deform a lot of things. So we're going to focus on one more deformer, and this is actually the most commonly used deformer in Maya and in most 3D applications, and that is joints or bones, depending on which software you're using. We're using Maya, and so we're going to rig our axe here with joints and bones. So the first thing I want to do is I do want to make sure my scale is pretty appropriate, because what I'm going to have happen is I want this axe to jump out of this box. And I think that we're pretty close. If I hit 4, I may scale it up just a touch. But if I try to scale it like it is now, it's all scaling pretty evenly. So that's good. I think that's a good size. And what I'm going to do is have it kind of curled up inside the box so it can kind of pop out, right? So 1.5 size, and I'm going to go ahead and 0 this back out. And then, like with everything, actually I'm going to go move this up to ground level a little bit there on the grid. If you don't see your grid, you can do show viewport, and you should be able to make sure the grid is turned on there. It used to be just out here in show, so they've moved that. So now we have this. I'm going to do modify, freeze transformations, and edit, delete by type, history. Okay. So just to explain joints and bones, I'm going to make some joints just to kind of show you how they work. And I'm going to do this from, if I go to the front view, not from this view, I'm going to do it from probably the right view. There we go. And so this is off to the side. And how I'm doing that is holding the space bar, clicking Maya, and choosing the view I want to see. If I want to get back to my perspective view, it's just straight up. Right? Okay. So I'm just going to show you off to the side. It usually works better to make joints in an orthographic view. We'll be able to find those under the animation menu here. And if we, under the rigging menu, and if we go to skeleton, you'll see them here. You'll also probably be able to find them here under rigging. You'll see, I'll show you, create joints. So I'm going to go to skeleton, create joints, and we're going to get a little crosshair in Maya. And I'm just going to draw out here in space just to show you what a joint is. So if I click, 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 every time I click, you'll see it creates a new joint that is connected to the previous joint. So mine looks kind of small. When I hit enter, it will complete it. I want to just show you, I don't know if this is my settings or the default settings in Maya, but this is not a great representation of what this joint looks like. To see this better, if I go to display, animations, joint size, yeah, I have this set down kind of small. And so I can just turn this up and you'll get a better visual of what that joint looks like, which is a sphere or a pivot point with an arrow kind of pointing to the next one. Right? Now, if we open up our outliner, we can also see these joints in here. And joints work very similarly to groups and very similarly to controls in that they don't render. We can see them in the viewport, and they work like a hierarchy. And so you'll see that we have this plus sign, and we have joint 1, which is this top joint. And if I hit E and rotate that, everything that is under joint 1, all of these other joints that are underneath here go with it. Right? If I want to expand all of these, I can hold Shift and click the plus sign, and it'll expand it all the way out. So you'll notice that if I select joint 2, everything that is under joint 2 goes with it, but joint 1 doesn't. And this is why we call it a hierarchy. This is a chain of connecting parent and child relationships. And now this is how most systems work. If you think about it, we're calling it joints, but if we were calling it bones, a bone is what actually makes my arm move as well. So the reason that we're using this is because this is how a lot of anatomical things work. So in addition to this being a hierarchy, this can also be a deformer. So for that to work, we actually, let's start over. Let's just delete all of that. And we're going to create another set of joints. And this time I'm going to start at the bottom of the axe. I click here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit 4. And I'm just going to sort of work my way up the axe and just put a new joint anywhere where I think I might want this to bend. And finally I go to here at the top, and then I'm going to go one more out the top of this. And then I can hit enter. You can see that I have this little hierarchy that goes through it. Okay, so let's name these just so we can have this a little bit of a better naming scheme. We'll call this root, because that's the root of the motion. We will call this spine 1, spine 2, we'll call this head, and then we'll call this head end. And so now you can see that if I grab the head and rotate it, that would be the head of the axe, right? If we're thinking of this as a creature. But even though it's inside of this axe, if I move it, it's not really affecting it. I also want to show you if I hit 6 and go back to wireframe mode, it's kind of hard to see the bones inside of here. So there's actually a way we can make that easier to see. If I go to shading, I'm going to say X-ray joints. And what that will let happen is those joints that are inside of the axe, I'll actually be able to see them. You can go here to perspective view, and you can kind of see it inside of there now. So joints don't have to be used as deformers. They may just be used as a hierarchy system to drive something else. But in this case, we do want to use them to deform the axe. So the way we do that is I choose the two pieces of axe mesh, and I choose the root. And so joints are usually surrounded by muscles and a skin. And so we're going to use skin. And skin is the deformer. Skin is the modifier that allows those joints to actually deform our axe. So if I go to skin and bind skin, that's going to do it. And so let's choose our options box here just so we can reset all of this and make sure it's all clean. Edit, reset settings. So this is probably what you're going to get with your default settings. Generally, what I usually use to get some of the better deformations is instead of joint hierarchy, instead of closest distance, I use closest and hierarchy. And what that is for is if you have like two legs that both have joints in them, the ankle from your left leg may be closer to your right ankle than your knee is, and so it may end up putting the weights on the wrong thing. So this will just make sure that we are kind of also respecting the hierarchy we made here. So if we hit apply and close, now if I grab one of these joints and rotate it, it'll also deform the axe. Now, for me, the biggest thing I really wanted was to be able to use this as like a head for my character to look around. And you'll notice something happening there. That blade is bending, right? And the reason for that is because some of these other joints down here are affecting it. If I do anything to these joints, I want to hit Control-Z and get it back to its original bind pose before I do too much. Because you don't want to rotate a bunch of stuff and then not be able to get it back to the original pose it was in. Okay, so we have this skeleton for our axe now. Let's go ahead and work on how this deformation is working. So the first thing I want to do is I want to fix this axe head twist issue. And one of the ways I can do this is having it set to 0. I'm going to hit S just to set a keyframe on it, and then S again. And then I'm just going to animate this, just looking around, just so I can see what the deformation is doing, right? And so what's happening is the bottom of, and the reason I did that is because now I know I can get it back to 0 whenever I want to, right? And so what's really happening here is that as the axe turns, this bottom piece here, right, is being affected by these joints below. And so the reason it's doing that is because of the way the skinning was applied to it. And the skinning is applied by having each vertex be affected by different joints. So after we do the skinning, we can actually change how that was applied. So this axe head will be a great example of how we could do that. So if I right click on the axe head and go Paint Skin Weights tool, we get this. And so as I click down here, you will see that head of the axe turns this axe white. But if I go to root, it's black. And that's because the root joint all the way down here at the bottom isn't affecting the axe head very much at all. Actually, it's affecting it none. Black is 0 and white is 1. So if I go up the spine, if I start working up the spine, you'll see spine 1, which is way down there, is affecting the axe head just a little bit at the bottom. And spine 2 is affecting it quite a bit at the bottom. And really what I want is I want head to completely control it. And the way we can do that is by painting influence. So you'll notice that I have like a little brush tip here. And when I go into my settings, yours may be set to replace. I usually turn mine to add. And this is going to add value to whatever it is you have selected. So I know this is a little confusing, but I have the head joint selected. And I want to paint on here and say, I would like this head joint to affect these points of the axe more. So I'm going to hold down B to make my brush a little bit bigger. And I want to make sure that my value is set to 1. And I'm set to add. And then if I drag my brush on here, you'll see I'm starting to paint that weight influence onto the axe. Right? Now, in this case, like it's a little tedious to get all this done. And in this case, I know I want the head to control all of the axe. So I can actually fix this by just hitting flood, and it will flood the entire mesh of the axe head to 1. And so now we get this. But we got some other problems now because the wood underneath it does not seem to have that same deformation. So you'll see now that as the axe looks around, the wood doesn't really go with it well enough. Right? So let me go ahead and zero that back out. So we'll do hit W, grab this, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete these keyframes off of here to make sure that we're back in our original space. And I'll go ahead and do another joint here to look at this, right? See how this is like kind of a sharp bend, and I would like that to be a little softer. So what I can do is select the axe body, Paint Skin Weights tool, and one of the things I could do is on the axe head, I can go up here and make sure that this is painted completely to 1. And then as we work our way down, I can make this a little less of a deformation, right? So right now the spine is affecting that pretty heavily, spine 2 is. And if I want the head to affect it just a little bit, maybe what I do is I turn my value down from 1 to 0.2. Let's try that. And then hold down B, tap B a few times to make it, Control Z, B, click to make that a little smaller. And then I'm just going to paint, instead of with add, I'll go to replace, paint this to where now the value on the head around that is at 0.2. And so what you'll see is, as I rotate this head, now I'm getting a little bit more of a gradual fall off on that. Right? The same with this. If I wished for that to be a little bit more gradual, then I really just want this to be a softer fall off. So again, Paint Skin Weights tool, spine 1, it's kind of sharp there. And so one of the things we can do with this, and this is a little dangerous, but we're going to do it anyway, is I'm going to set this to smooth, and I'm just going to hit flood a few times. And what that's going to do is sort of smooth that transition out a little bit. Go to spine 2, do the same thing, smooth that out a little bit. Go down to root. And so you'll see as we walk up there, that fall off is all a little easier now. Let me fold that a few more times. And now when I rotate this, getting a little bit of a softer bend to it. See? So this isn't perfect, but this is the most tedious part that most people really fight with, is the painting of the skin weights. And we will work on that more in future classes, but it is something that is crucial to make sure that this deformation is working the way we want it to, so I can get the right animation.